And you say, hey, I have a program. I can take 90% of your type 2 diabetics off diabetes, off their diabetes meds, and return them to normal blood glucose. I want to do this program. Well, diabetes is the #1 cause of surgical amputations. It drives a lot of surgical business. Type 2 diabetes today is the #1 cause of renal failure and renal transplants and dialysis. That's a huge business. Type 2 diabetes is a leading cause of blindness. Type 2 diabetes is a major driver for cardiovascular disease, stroke, and heart attack, which is the #1 killer that determines statistically most of our longevity. Alzheimer's disease is strongly linked now to glucose metabolism, which is what diabetes is, to the point where many, some authors are referring to diabetes, to Alzheimer's disease as type 3 diabetes. And of course, cancer also, diabetics have a much higher rate of cancer as well. So all these diseases are linked, and coming up with a program to reverse diabetes is going to change everything in healthcare. The other problem,
just if I can jump in, what you're talking about is really kind of unfathomable, or something that was unfathomable to me even just a few years ago, because you're suggesting that the health system wants to keep people sick.
There are things built into the health system. I don't think any doctor, any human being wants to hurt another human being or wants them to be unhealthy. Maybe subconsciously we tell ourselves things that maybe make us do things, but I believe that people are basically good and they want to do good things. Right. But taking the other side of the argument, there are biases built into our institution. In other words, I'm a doctor in a clinic, right? I have a diabetic patient. I get to spend 7 minutes with them. It's much easier to prescribe metformin and insulin and take a couple lab tests than it is to do an entire program about low carbohydrate diet and switch over their whole eating structure. I mean, it's been known that carbohydrates drive type 2 diabetes for a long time. It's not a secret, but getting people to avoid the junk foods, avoid the carbohydrates that drive type 2 diabetes is a big ask. And right now our healthcare system, it's not enough for the doctor just to say, well, stop eating carbohydrates and you won't need this insulin. Sometimes the patient says, hey, I'd rather have a pill or even a shot than change my whole diet and give up all my junk food and change my way of living. So there are many different factors. There's a lot of pushback from individuals. Junk food itself is addictive, and junk food is mainly carbohydrates. It's high in seed oils. All these things drive insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. I confess, I'm a recovering junk food addict. I know how hard it is to give that stuff up. And it's not enough for the doctor just to tell me don't eat junk food. I know not to eat junk food, but there are subconscious drivers that we all have that drive our addictions, and it's not easy to get over them. Patients come to me for their diabetes, and I tell them, well, just cut out carbohydrates. They'll go to another doctor. They say they want a pill. They want something that works like that. But this diabetes effect, this insulin resistance, this metabolic abnormality that was driving all 4 of the diseases that I have, it turns out that it drives not only those diseases, but also all the chronic diseases that essentially determine our longevity. Cardiovascular disease, cancer, Alzheimer's disease are all driven by that. So what happens is if we improve our metabolic health, not only do we lower our risk of getting these chronic diseases, we actually improve our longevity and change many of the phenotypes or appearances of aging. So these are it's not just being healthier, but it's actually we live a lot longer. It's dramatic how these things are all tied together.
Well, I think, I don't know if you told me this on camera or off camera, but you said that the food pyramid is actually inverted. And I think I saw, it was a South Park episode about this or something?
Yes.
Right? Maybe we can clip that into the episode, but that exists, right? Or am I imagining
this? Yeah, it's
this?
on my Twitter feed if you want, or Instagram too.
Sir, we've got a match.
Nutrition is stabilizing.
We've got a well-balanced vaccine, sir.
Okay. well, so how is that? Explain that.
That's a great question. And one of the prime drivers, I believe, in the metabolic disease state that we're all in, and the epidemics of these chronic disease that we're facing in the 2020s had its origin back in the 1960s and 70s when the United States public health got into making policy for nutritional decisions. And basically it was around the mistaken idea that dietary cholesterol and dietary saturated fat drives heart disease. And heart disease was and is the #1 killer. So the United States began a food pyramid plan which emphasized low fat diets and high carbohydrate diets, which is it's basically a junk food diet, and it's a pyramid with carbohydrates and sugars at the bottom and things like fats at the top of the pyramid where you eat less of them. This pyramid became public health policy. All the schools use this for kids.
I remember being taught something like this. I mean, I'm Canadian, but roughly it was the same structure, exactly like you described, especially saturated fats. That was the enemy, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And cholesterol too in eggs. There's
right.
To this point, and even today, most people, even the conservative orthodox cardiologists, will admit that dietary cholesterol doesn't really affect serum cholesterol, so that those egg white omelets at the restaurants you see, you don't need to eat those anymore. It's probably in my opinion, one of the healthiest things we can eat is an egg. But these dietary changes starting in the 60s and 70s have now swept through society to where we're consuming large amount of junk food, which means a large amount of carbohydrates and refined carbohydrate sugars, a large amount of seed oils, which are industrial oils, which have the benign sounding name of vegetable oils, but there's no vegetables in them. They were originally developed as a lubricant for German U-boats in World War I with Crisco oil, but they're unhealthy, and in my opinion, they drive insulin resistance and drive inflammation. We're now seeped in these things. And on top of that, with the fast food revolution, it's not just what we're eating that's bad, but we're eating all the time. When growing up, we used to eat 3 meals a day, and then basically it became, oh no, eat 6 small meals a day. And my kids at school, they have snacks scheduled into their day between their other ones. And so people are eating all the time. Eating itself drives inflammation. Inflammation is our normal response to food being in our gut. So anytime I eat something, the body normally gets a little inflamed just as a protection of that foreign protein, that foreign material coming into the body. So if you think about it, if you want to improve your diet and you don't want to change what you're eating, you can still improve your health, improve your diet by just not eating all the time. In other words, narrow your eating window, cut out between meal snacks, maybe even skip breakfast, maybe even skip lunch. I mean, I eat 1 meal a day, and I've never felt better. I don't get brain fog in the middle of the day, and I'm in something called ketosis nearly all the time. And I think for me, it's the healthy way to be, and I love it.
So, I started a keto diet years ago. I kind of go on and off of it, right? But just simply as a weight loss thing. And it actually works incredibly well when you're in that state of ketosis, right? The fat is being burned instead of carbohydrates. There aren't carbohydrates to burn, I guess.
And ketosis, I mean, if you think about it, human beings evolved over hundreds of thousands of years as primarily hunter-gatherers. And at that point, if you're a hunter-gatherer, you eat when you have a kill, and then you may go for a period of a week or so with fasting, at which point you're in ketosis. And it wasn't until 12,000 years ago with the agricultural revolution, which Jared Diamond, who wrote Guns, Germs, and Steel, and even Yuval Harari, who wrote Sapiens, both of them famously agree that the worst possible thing that the human beings have done was with the development of agriculture. And you can see why, because agriculture made food available nearly constantly, and that was accelerated, of course, with refrigeration and junk foods. But as food became more and more available, people did not go into ketosis because there wasn't this period of fasting between the hunt and the kill. And the amazing thing about ketosis is, as I researched it more, it doesn't just help diabetes, but ketosis helps cancer. It's a cancer treatment or an adjunct to chemotherapy for patients. In Alzheimer's disease patients, ketosis is, for many of them, helps bring back their memory. So one could argue that ketosis is the natural, healthy state of human beings throughout history until literally the last 12,000 years. And some of the most amazing things about ketosis are in neurodegenerative diseases. You know, we talked a little bit off camera about Guillain-Barré syndrome, and it's seen with Parkinson's disease, and certainly with seizures. Ketosis is fasting, which drives ketosis, is an accepted treatment for seizures 2,000 years ago. There's a whole work about how junk food drives violence in kids. These are correlation studies,
right,
not controlled prospective studies. So
sure,
causality can't be inferred, but there's certainly some correlations with people eating junk food and being more angry, being more depressed, being more anxious. So it's really